During the extremely tragic years under the genocidal regime of Cambodia, there were countless powerful and wealthy nations in the world, but only our poor neighbor Viet Nam came to save our people. These words were written in the newspaper of the Cambodian people in Faith 39's Revolutionary Party, 26, 1989. Last Vietnamese volunteer soldiers returned home having completed their high-level international duty. This affirmation demonstrated the righteousness of the war to defend the Southwestern border, where our army not only fought against foreign powers but also carried out the mission of rescuing the Cambodian people from the catastrophe of annihilation caused by the Khmer Rouge. Throughout their years in Cambodia, the Buddhist army upheld a pure international spirit, ready to fight and sacrifice for the survival of both nations. They are living proof that righteousness always triumphs over brutality and wisdom triumphs over. On April 30, 1975, the resistance war against Cambodia ended in victory, reuniting North and South Vietnam. The country and Faith 39's land and rivers are connected. It was thought that Vietnam had now achieved peace and stability to overcome the consequences of war and rebuild a strong nation. However, the reality was very different. We once again had to take up arms to defend our country against the invasion of the Khmer Rouge forces in Cambodia. To understand who this enemy was, please pay attention to the screen. The character appearing before you is named. In 1963, this person became the leader of the Cambodian people in a 39's Revolutionary Party, which changed its name to the Khmer Rouge Communist Party in 1966, also known as the Khmer. After seizing power, PP began to act hostilely towards Vietnam and the true Cambodian communists, aiming to build a purely agricultural society, abolish all forms of private ownership, eliminate all social classes including intellectuals, clergy, and those considered enemies of the revolution. In that context, with the goal of hegemony and territorial expansion, PP relentlessly pursued the vast territory of Vietnam, especially in the lands that he claimed belonged to the once glorious Cambodian Empire. He began his ambitions by propagating the idea that Vietnam had betrayed Cambodia by signing the Geneva Accords in. He also circulated more than 10 documents criticizing the Vietnamese Labor Party for not supporting the risky revolutionary path he pursued from 1970. While Vietnam was focused on fighting the Americans in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge carried out 174 attacks, stealing food and weapons and killing more than 600 cadres and soldiers. After the Paris Agreement was signed in 1973, continued to spread propaganda inciting opposition and accusing Vietnam of betraying the Indo-Chinese Revolution. Faced with this hostile attitude from the Khmer Rouge leader, Vietnam still tried to find a peaceful solution through negotiations and agreements respecting each other and 39's independence and sovereignty. However, that hope was soon shattered after the revolutions in both countries triumphed on. In 1975, the Cambodian government launched military attacks on many areas of Vietnamese territory, culminating on April 4th when a Khmer Rouge unit raided Phu Quoc Island. 6 days later, they continued their attack on Do Chu Island, executing over 500 civilians. Alongside these atrocities against the Vietnamese people, the Cambodian government perpetrated a genocidal regime, killing millions of innocent Cambodians. Their brutal policy for those who opposed them was to kill even 1 million more people rather than let a single innocent person escape. If someone joined the resistance, their entire family would be killed. Witnessing these crimes firsthand in Sam Dek T Cho Hun Sen Engi, then a regimental commander, resolutely left his homeland, overcoming dangers to go to Vietnam to call for support in liberating the Cambodian people from the brutal rule of the genocidal regime. Later, when the Vietnamese people in Faith 39's army was deployed, preparing to launch a counteroffensive against the Khmer Rouge forces, Hun Sen became one of the leaders of the true patriotic Cambodian forces. Standing shoulder to shoulder with our troops in June 1977, the Central Committee of the Khmer Communist Party issued a resolution officially recognizing Vietnam as the #1 enemy, the eternal enemy, of Cambodia and expanding the conflict into a war of aggression against our country. They put forward a new fighting strategy, asserting that the war between us and Vietnam would be long-term and knowing if we didn't in Fe 39 attack them first, we wouldn't in 39 win, just by killing a few dozen every day. A few thousand every month and a few tens of thousands every year, we could fight for 10, 15, or even 20 years, achieving a 30-kill strategy, sacrificing 2 million Cambodians to eliminate 60 million Vietnamese. From May to mid-1978 alone, the Khmer Rouge attacked and caused casualties to approximately 10,000 Vietnamese civilians and abducted over 20,000 others. The most heartbreaking of these casualties was, it is worth mentioning, the Bai truck massacre in April 1978, when they massacred over 3,000 civilians, including more than 100 entire families. In addition, thousands of infrastructure projects in our country were destroyed. Cattle were stolen and killed, crops were destroyed, tens of thousands of hectares of land and rubber plantations on the southwestern border were abandoned, and about 500,000 people living around the border had to flee their homes into the interior. These actions and the heartbreaking consequences they caused exposed the brutal nature of the genocidal regime. The situation became even more unstable when China not only actively present itself in Cambodia through its advisory team, but also increased military aid. China, despite these complex developments, Vietnam still tried to find a solution through diplomacy, but our efforts received no response from China, the people in Fe 39's Republic of China, or even the United Nations. Therefore, war was inevitable given their aggressive and belligerent nature. With the support of China, the Khmer Rouge mobilized 10 of its 19 divisions to attack and invade Vietnamese territory along the entire southwestern border. In the temporarily occupied areas, the Khmer Rouge forces carried out genocidal tactics against the Vietnamese people, just as they had done to their own compatriots. However, the Vietnamese army fiercely resisted, preventing the enemy from holding any area outside Ha Tien town for a short time and forcing them to withdraw to the other side of the border. By the end of 1978, it was discovered that the Khmer Rouge intended to concentrate a large force to attack Tay Ninh province simultaneously in response to the urgent call from the Cambodian National United Front for National Salvation, Khmer UF, NSK, the Politburo, and the Central Military Commission decided to launch historic counter-offensive along the entire southwestern border with the highest determination to completely end the threat from the genocidal regime and protect peace and stability in the region. We mobilized 3 main units: the combined forces of the 3rd and 4th Corps, along with divisions from military regions 5, 7, 9 include the Border Guard, the Navy, and the 372nd Air Force Division. This formidable force was under the command of Le Trong Tan, one of the most skilled generals in Vietnamese history. On the other side of the front line, there were 19 divisions equipped with Chinese weapons and commanded by highly experienced officers. Furthermore, the Khmer Rouge soldiers were very loyal and trustworthy, but due to heavy losses in previous battles, the number of soldiers in each division was only about 4,000, less than half of our equivalent units. 23rd, 1978. Counter-offensive officially began with fierce artillery bombardments by the Vietnamese Volunteer Army along the entire border between the north and south. 3 days later, the entire outer defense system of the Khmer Rouge was broken. By the morning of December 31, our army and people had captured, on the same day that the entire territory of the fatherland was recovered from the great enemy in 39's occupation, the 3rd Army Corps launched a powerful attack on Kampong Tram, beginning operations to fight the enemy deep inside Cambodian territory. Despite the fierce resistance of the Khmer Rouge, Vietnamese forces were able to advance with lightning speed, quickly destroying many important enemy strongholds and liberating occupied areas. In northern Cambodia, our troops routed the Khmer Rouge forces stationed in the 3 provinces of Ratanakiri, Mook, and Stung Chang. Meanwhile, the 3 main Khmer Rouge army groups, each with 5 divisions, guarding over 30 main roads leading to Phen Thiet, including routes 1, 2, and 7, were essentially annihilated by our troops. 1979, entire Cambodian territory east of the Mekong River was essentially under the control of the Vietnamese Volunteer Army. Following this victory on January 6, our army deployed 2 offensives, creating a pincer movement to destroy the enemy and advance towards liberation. Accordingly, the first column attacked from the southeast through Phan Nhi, while the remaining column moved from the north through Kong Kong Trang province in the south. The B Corps quickly crossed the river, occupying both banks and defeating the Khmer Rouge forces defending the area. Meanwhile, in the north, the Paratrooper Corps faced strong enemy fire but still managed to build a pontoon bridge across the river and successfully destroy enemy strongholds, liberating Kong Bong Tra. On the same day, the assault force of the 10th Division, led by the 20th Regiment with over 120 military vehicles, crossed the river and began its advance. Faced with this situation, the Khmer Rouge leaders, including P. Nuya and KF, hastily fled to Quoc Sat province. Yari also retreated to Bat Tambang province on a train along with several hundred diplomatic personnel. On 1979, Peng was completely liberated. Our troops seized many aircraft, hundreds of tanks, and armored vehicles, along with ammunition and food left behind by the enemy. The majority of the 3rd Corps, under the command of General Kim Tuan, continued to pursue and confront the resistance of the Khmer Rouge remnants in Battambang and Siam, while the 320th Division advanced to liberate Vietnamese cities. After Pompeii was completely cleared of the Khmer Rouge, with the help of Vietnam, the Cambodian Revolutionary Council was immediately established under the leadership of Hamrin. From here, the land of temples officially escaped the darkness of the Khmer Rouge genocide and entered a new period of national reconstruction. Simultaneously, on the southern front, the Vietnamese army also attacked the Khmer Rouge forces from An Giang in 2 main directions from January 0, 1979. Specifically, the first direction, led by the 325th and 8th Divisions of the 2nd Corps, advanced toward southwestern Cambodia. After 2 days of fighting with the Khmer Rouge in this area, the 325th Division broke through the enemy in 39's defenses and captured the village of Tc Mies in Campos province, while the 8th Regiment, under the command of General Nguyen Huan, launched an attack. The Vietnamese Navy, operating from Cu Quoc, conducted a fierce artillery barrage to create conditions for special forces to land at the foot of Buco Mountain on the night of January 9th. However, our troops were forced to withdraw due to the tide. Despite difficulties in deploying forces, the Vietnamese volunteer troops still controlled Campos Port and the Re Port, subsequently clearing the enemy from Xiang Port. Simultaneously, the second attack direction was assigned to Military Region 9. This involved opening a path northward, directly targeting the strategic objective of Takeo Town. Here, our troops quickly overcame the complex terrain, organizing a direct attack on the Khmer Rouge 39's defensive positions. Although numerous and brutal, the Khmer Rouge forces in this area could not withstand the strength of the Vietnamese divisions and had to flee into the forest. The attack by Military Region 9 not only cleared the enemy from Takeo but also contributed significantly to the overall victory, becoming a springboard for subsequent pursuit operations. The next sweep pushed the Khmer Rouge into a corner. January 9, the counter-offensive by the Vietnamese Volunteer Army concluded with a brilliant victory. In less than a month, from December 23 to January 17, 1989, Beta, in coordination with the Cambodian Revolutionary Forces, annihilated 18 Rouge divisions, killing 12,000 enemy soldiers, capturing and having 200 surrender. As a result, over 4 million Cambodian people were liberated from brutal rule. All of the Khmer Rouge and 39's material resources and weapons were recovered, and their cruel regime was overthrown. However, the threat from the Khmer Rouge forces was not completely eliminated. Their remnants continued to carry out attacks, inflicting significant losses on the Vietnamese forces. In this situation, Beta continued to launch large-scale sweeps, targeting the remnants of the Khmer Rouge with the goal of completely eliminating this threat. After the liberation of the capital, forces from the 3rd Corps of Military Region N and Military Region 7 of our army immediately crossed the Mekong River, quickly taking control of the northern area of Tunnel Sap Lake. On January 9th, Vietnamese troops liberated Cam Do province, simultaneously controlling the Route 6 connecting this area with France. Meanwhile, ordered to liberate Dieppe City, the 66th Regiment of the 3rd Corps with 36 trucks carrying troops and, supported by tanks, advanced 100 Khmer in just 2 hours and crushed Khmer Rouge checkpoints along the. By dawn on January 10th, our troops had controlled Z-Dip, forcing the enemy to flee in chaos. The next day, Vietnamese troops advanced another 100 kilometers to liberate Sophan town, only 50 kilometers from the Thai border. By January 12th, our troops completely controlled Tam Bang province, what was once a major Khmer Rouge stronghold, forced the enemy there to disperse into small groups and switch to guerrilla warfare. With successive victories, the Vietnamese Volunteer Army controlled the entire northwestern region of Cambodia. By March 13, General Kim Tuan had moved the 3rd Corps command to Batamang province to directly command the operation to hunt down the remaining Khmer Rouge forces. However, on March 16, he was seriously wounded in an enemy ambush and died the following day, becoming the highest-ranking officer of the Viet Nam 39's Army to die on Cambodian soil. Inheriting his spirit of decisive victory, the 3rd Corps continued its mission before withdrawing to Vietnam in June 1979 to protect the northern border against the invading Chinese army. In the campaign to hunt down the Khmer Rouge, one of the fiercest battles took place in the town of Kampong Sepu, which was under the protection of the 10th Regiment of the 339th Division of our army. After Quyen attempted to flee, he only managed to escape. A few days later, the remnants of the Khmer Rouge from San Francisco poured all their forces into retaking the area, but the Vietnamese soldiers held firm, crushing their counterattack. After 17 days of fierce fighting, Kampong Spor remained under the control of the Vietnamese Volunteer Army, ensuring the smooth flow of traffic and affirming our overwhelming dominance on the battlefield. Next, main Vietnamese divisions captured the Amalgam Base, the new headquarters of the French. Despite the treacherous terrain and constant ambushes, the Vietnamese forces still controlled the battlefield and forced the enemy to retreat. The campaign to capture this important enemy supply base was launched. Our forces had to use a large force and organize a 4-pronged encirclement from the north. After liberating Puksa town, the 340th Division opened a direct attack on the enemy in their 39 defense line. Meanwhile, the 341st Division, with the momentum from the victory at Amalgam, would attack from the east. From the south, the 341st Military Region landed on the coast of Kokong Province. Then from the 31st Division of the 3rd Corps advanced from the Thai border, attacking westward towards the last remaining Khmer Rouge stronghold. Therefore, the enemy resisted fiercely, causing the battle to last over a month and resulting in heavy losses for both sides. Ultimately, due to weak firepower, disease, and a lack of reinforcements, the enemy could not hold out and fell. 1979. Complete collapse of the Khmer Rouge regime, and was also the last major battle between the Vietnamese Volunteer Army and the Khmer Rouge. On Cambodian soil, the remaining enemy troops retreated to secret bases in Pin Province near the Thai border or withdrew into the deep forests to fight as. By mid-March 1979, Vietnamese troops attacked the Ta Dinh base, the last Khmer Rouge stronghold in the south of. On March 28, Ta Dinh fell, forcing the enemy to retreat, abandoning many documents and 3,000 tons of ammunition. Following this victory, Vietnamese forces were quickly assigned to the Binh Dinh campaign. Many elite divisions suffered heavy losses and were withdrawn back to Vietnam. Simultaneously, newly formed units were deployed to reinforce and replace them. Despite the victory, our army suffered losses, with casualties reaching 8,000 soldiers. The 4th Corps, the main force of the Liberation Army, alone experienced 18 months of fierce fighting from to 1979 with over 3,000 casualties. However, these immense sacrifices were misunderstood and strongly condemned by the international community. They believed that we were not helping Cambodia but had carried out. In 1985, the United Nations voted to pass a resolution imposing sanctions on Vietnam. Countries such as Laos, Syria, Poland, Mongolia, the Soviet Union, Cuba, Czechoslovakia, Yemen, and Iraq vehemently opposed it, while several other countries, even our socialist brothers, remained silent. The vote was in favor, while on the other side of the battle lines, despite support from many powerful forces, the Khmer Rouge was almost completely wiped out. However, about 30,000 people remained, retreating into the mountains or fleeing to Thailand to continue their destructive activities. In this situation, and at the request of the government of the People in 39's Republic of Cambodia. Vietnam maintained a large military force to protect the gains of the war and continued to assist its neighbor until September. Throughout the period of military service in Cambodia, Vietnamese soldiers and experts helped millions of people return to their homeland to restore production and rebuild houses, schools, and from then on, Cambodia gradually revived the flame of hope for the entire nation, remembering the blood and bones of the Vietnamese soldiers in the war to protect the southwestern border of the country. This is a powerful testament to the fighting spirit against foreign invasion and the noble international spirit of the Vietnamese soldiers facing foreign invaders. We not only firmly defended the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our nation, but also bravely fought the Cambodian people in Faith 39's Liberation Army against the brutal rule of the Khmer Rouge. The Cambodian people believed that only gods and Buddhas could save them from hardship and misery. Just when the Cambodian people were on the verge of death and could only pray for divine intervention, the Vietnamese Volunteer Army appeared. The Vietnamese Army is the army of Buddha, as the president of the Cambodian Senate, Samthi Hen once stated. Furthermore, despite misunderstandings, condemnations, and sanctions from the international community, our victory against the Khmer Rouge demonstrated the independent spirit and righteousness of our people, laying the foundation for peace, stability, and solidarity between the two nations, making a significant contribution to the development and overall security of the East Asian region.